Good afternoon, ladies and gents. It's 17th of July 2024, and today I'm going to be providing you with an in-depth nuclear sort of simulation on not one but two towns here in the United Kingdom. We've already looked at and covered an overview of what NukeMap simulations look like, and we've already identified up to 40 possible targets here in the UK, but there will be more possible targets that you guys are probably aware of, depending on where you live in the UK. The reason for this video is because it's okay me sort of sat here yapping on about 150 kiloton tactical nukes detonating on or above counterforce or countervalue targets here in the UK. But now we've spoken about radiation, RADs, shielding, shelters, personal protection, and so on. It just makes sense now to simulate a detonation and talk about the likely dosages under different situations. So, for example, if you're driving down the road in the countryside and a missile strikes, what does that mean to you if you're in the car at that time? Or you're sat at your desk at work, 5 floors up in a multi-story building, and you see a nuclear detonation flash out of the window, and the windows are about to, be sort of taken out, by a nuclear blast that follows a few seconds afterwards. So I just want to kind of look at those scenarios and just look mainly at the purpose of this video is really just to sort of tell you and give you an idea of the likely dosage of radiation you're likely to receive, and what you can do about it, really. So I'm just going to place you guys in different situations, and we're just going to see what that looks like in real time. I'm going to apologise in advance, though, for anyone that's living in either the town of Mildenhall or Brize Norton. Unfortunately, guys, they're both primary targets, and it just makes sense to use them in the simulation strike, to be honest with you. But just before we start that simulation, we're going to start with Mildenhall. And the reason why I've chosen this town is because it's an RAF, or it's a joint RAF and USAF Air Force base, with approximately 3,700 active duty and civilian personnel that's sort of stationed there on a full-time basis. And they are there supporting the Ready Force and Strategic Forward Base, specifically around the air sort of refueling platform across Europe, and is therefore it's deemed a primary counterforce target. The second location we'll be simulating against is Brize Norton in Oxfordshire. It's another joint RAF US Air Base or Air Force base with approximately 5,800 active service personnel, 300 civilians, and also there's an additional 1,200 contractors working there. Those guys are supporting RAF's air mobility force, encompassing strategic and tactical air transport and also air-to-air refueling. So similar to some of those support functions in Mildenhall. RAF Brize Norton also provide rapid global mobility in support of UK overseas operations and exercises, as well as the AAR support for fast sort of jet aircraft. So again, ladies and gents, another primary counterforce target here in the UK. Sorry, guys, if you're living anywhere near those bases. Ladies and gents, I just want to say this before I sort of kick this session off. If you have watched my previous videos in order, you will now be aware of the threats to the UK. You will have an understanding of what radiation actually is and what you can do to protect yourselves from it. You will also know whether or not you and or your family live in a possible primary target here in the UK. When I say primary target, a target that could possibly be hit by the enemy. You will also be familiar with NukeMap, the online application that we're going to be using today, that allows us to simulate these detonations and then understand, or you should now understand, that a nuclear attack isn't as bad as millions of people make it out to be. Because there's just so much bullshit and myths out there in relation to nuclear war, nuclear detonations, and what that all means. And on top of that, if you have watched my previous videos, you'll have an understanding of people's reactions to such disasters, that being, the people around you, people you work with, next door neighbors, family, friends, whatever. So I have covered a couple of videos on normality bias, or the problem of that. and also panic buyers. I'm gonna what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna bring up NukeMap, and we're just gonna go through these simulations, and I'm just gonna show you the sort of figures and facts and metrics, and just go through some of that with you, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about here. But if you can, right, first and foremost, I'm going to be mentioning some maybe words and phrases during this session that I'd hope that you would kind of understand. Now, if you have only just jumped onto this video and you haven't watched my previous 19, then I would suggest that you stop watching this one and go back and watch the others. And I know when I say 19, that's a lot, but there's two or three in there that talk about radiation, what it means, what RADs and REMs are, what shielding is, what protection, what protection measures you can take, all those kinds of things that you ideally really need to kind of know about as well. But listen, guys, if you haven't got time for that, or you can't be asked and you want to stick with this, then let's stick with this. Before I get started, just another quick disclaimer. Just quickly on this sort of nuclear war, bombs, explosions, detonations, and stuff like that. Survivability is highly sort of dependable on factors such as if you're indoors or outdoors, the size of the explosion, the proximity of the explosion, and to a lesser degree, the direction of the wind carrying that fallout. With medical attention, radiation exposure is survivable to 200 REMs of acute dose exposure. So again, like I say, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say 200 REMs, then I would go back to my other videos. Start watching those. Watch them in order because they are published and created logically. And then, by the time you get to this video, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. If a group of people is exposed to 50 to 59 REMs, acute radiation dose, within a 24-hour period, none of them will get radiation sickness. If the group is exposed to 60 to 180 REMs, 50% will be they'll be sick with the radiation poisoning. If medically treated, all of the 60 to 180 REM group will survive. If the group is exposed to 200 to 450 REMs, most, if not all of that group will become sick. 50% will die within 2 to 4 weeks, even with medical attention that's going to be. If the group is exposed to 460 to 600 REMs, then 100% of that group will get radiation poisoning, and 50% will die within 1 to 3 weeks. If the group is exposed to 600 to 1000 REMs, 50% will die within 1 to 3 weeks. If the group is exposed to 1000 to 5000 REMs, now when I'm saying these numbers, these are high numbers. I mean, you'd have to be in ground zero to be anywhere near these amounts. 100% of that group will die within 2 weeks. And if you're unfortunate enough to get hit with 5000 REMs, then 1000% of that group will die within 2 days. Hopefully that means something to you guys. If it doesn't, again, you might struggle with some of what I'm going to be explaining in this. It's going to be a simulation, okay? But I am going to be mentioning, those dosages. We're going to start by opening NukeMap. Right, so listen, guys, if you haven't watched my previous videos, NukeMap is it's an application that allows us to simulate what we're going to be simulate. So just open a web browser like Google and just type in NukeMap. And it'll be the top one, the one by Alex Wellerstein. Okay, so we'll just click on that and it's going to take you straight to the site. And but what it should do is default a pin drop into the capital of the UK, that being London. Now you'll see from the right, you've got a couple of options here. This application to use is easy. Okay, there's nothing hard about this at all. The only challenging bit is just to work out the metrics and what they mean to you and your family in a given area or a given scenario. So again, if you haven't watched my previous videos, there are going to be 2 types of detonations that we're going to concentrate on. The first one's going to be an airburst. An airburst is a missile that's coming in and it explodes or detonates before it hits the ground. And then we've got a ground burst or surface burst that basically detonates as soon as it hits the ground. Now, the reason why we're using 2 types there is because there's different reactions. With an airburst, you're unlikely to get a mushroom cloud, which is what everybody associates nuclear war with. Or, you've got your ground burst, which will create a mushroom cloud. So just going through these settings. Firstly, what you want to be doing is you want to be selecting the location that you want to detonate this bomb off in. And we are going to start with Mildenhall. So you can drag the marker to a given location, and then that's it. If you know where that location is in the UK, there's, depends on your geography skills, or you can just simply type it in, which is what I'm going to do here. So I've typed in Mildenhall. It's going to be the RAF or the US Air Force base that we spoke about. Now, you get a choice, or not a choice, but you can specify the yield of the warhead. That's the size of the warhead. Now, again, I'm not going to go through that with you now, guys, because I've covered this in previous videos. It's important to understand, which is why I really strongly advise that you go back and watch these others to understand what a yield is and a detonation type and all the different types of missiles and everything else. Okay, otherwise, you're kind of just you're kind of listening to this and you're not going to fully understand it. And this video is important in the sense that I'm going to be placing you guys into situations, scenarios, whether you're in a car, at work, at home, at work, in the office, in front of your desk, or in a warehouse, or walking the dog. There's going to be different impacts to you depending on where you are. Obviously, if you stood outside and the strike happens and the detonation happens, you're fully exposed compared to, let's say, being in a 5-story building or basement or whatever. But anyway, moving on. For this simulation, we're going to be using 175 kilotons. That's 175 kiloton warhead. Sorry. So I'm just going to put the yield in there. Now, what you can do on here, you can either put the yield if you know what yield you want to use, or you can actually select from a list. And these are well-known atomic nuclear bombs that have been detonated either through testing, simulating, or even in a wartime scenario. So if any of you are aware, the 2 atomic bombs that went off in Japan, in Nagasaki or Hiroshima, you can just select those. You can click that. It's already got the kiloton and the type and everything else. We're not doing that today. I'm going to be putting 175 kiloton in there. Now, you either select a surface burst or an air burst. So Mildenhall is going to receive an air burst detonation. Just one other thing I'm going to mention here. We're going to detonate this around about 2,000 feet above that airbase. I've set this height because the estimate can be anywhere between 100 to 1,000 meters above our heads. Now, remember, guys, the airburst detonation will happen above the target before the missile hits the ground. So we've got an airburst here. I tend to tick these, so it just gives us statistics on fatalities, casualties, and everything else. Now, there are advanced settings. I'm not going to go through these. They deal with PSI. Let's just open it up. You've got PSI settings. You've got different REM stats to sort of see, and different types of effects that the radiation would have on you, whether it's a degree burns or whatever. I'm gonna leave that out of there because these are not the settings that I want to show you today. I want to show you some other settings. So as soon as you've got that in there, so what we're doing, we're going to detonate an airburst 175 kiloton tactical nuke above Mildenhall. Just quickly, I'm just going to drag this across. You can see that this is RAF Mildenhall. You can see a big long runway there, and I can imagine all of these being military outbuildings and residential and everything else. Okay, so a primary target. Let's get that back into the middle of the screen, and I'm just going to click detonate. First thing you're going to see on the right here is the estimated fatalities and the estimated injuries. 10,700 fatalities are likely if that happens, and also 15,500 estimated injuries. Now, what you'll see on the screen is you're going to see 5 rings or radiuses. Okay, to get an idea of what they are, with your mouse the pointer, you can just hover over, let's say, the fireball radius, and then you'll see in the middle of the screen that radius is flashing. If I move it down to the radiation radius, then you've got that radius flashing and so forth. Okay, I'm just going to explain what these 5 are quickly so you can understand it. If you live in Mildenhall, then you know what the likely impact is going to be here, or if you live out here down in Kentford, what that's going to mean to you in this radius. So the fireball radius, okay, let's just zoom in on that. So you can see from the fireball radius, it's only going to be about half a kilometre wide or 500 metres. And this is based on a minimum blast height of around about 1,020 metres. I said 2,000 feet. So we'll just keep it at that. It's going to explode above the town. Anything in this radius will, unfortunately, guys, be vaporized pretty much. The radiation radius, sorry. So that's that one. I think if you're in that zone, you're done. And it doesn't matter whether it's a tactical nuke or not. If a missile with a 175 kiloton warhead of any type hits that location or it detonates, then it's going to be catastrophic for most. The radiation radius, that is around about a kilometre, just under a kilometre across in terms of diameter. It's about 11 squared kilometres. So that's that area. Exposure to the human body is standing, or anybody that's standing outside, will be around about 500 rads or rems, shall we say. So you're going to get exposed if you're stood outside walking your dog, for instance, in this radiation radius. Sorry about right, radiation radius. Yeah, you're going to get about 500 rads or rems. So 50% basically of people without medical assistance with radiation dosages of 400 rad or higher will most likely die within 60 days. Remember, guys, we're talking about people that have a full body exposure, so no protection whatsoever. So from Mildenhall out to Burton Mills. Where is that? Burton Mills here. So just here, there's a small village there. That's going to be a critical ground zero anywhere in this sort of area. And we're not talking about radiation here necessarily. It's more of the blast and the explosion from the initial detonation and the damage caused to the buildings in those areas. Let's move on to the moderate blast damage. So we've got a wider area here. It's around about 4 kilometres across, and most residential buildings will collapse here. Injuries are universal and fatalities are still widespread, with many buildings actually catching fire. You're going to have injuries which will come off of the back of these fires, and also collapsing sort of buildings with people still inside them. People living in places like Holywell Row and Beck Row up here, just in the north. So we've got Beck Row, Holywell Row. They will be in the moderate blast zone radius and should expect many fires to start in the buildings, and fatalities still will be widespread. So in this area, okay. In terms of exposure, it actually doesn't say on there the REM or RAD exposure. So let's leave that. Moving on to the fourth one. As you can see, that's that fourth one there. That's the thermal radiation radius, which is going to cause you third-degree burns for anyone who stood outside at the time of the detonation. So again, if you're walking your dog or just out in the street shopping, whatever, you're going to get third-degree burns from that explosion. People living in villages such as Tuddingham, Red Lodge, Feckenham, West Row, Beck Row, and those sorts of places are subjected to third-degree burns if caught outside, obviously when that strike happens. Last but not least, let's zoom out a little bit so we can see it. We've got what they call the light blast damage radius. So that's about 11 kilometers wide, and basically what's going to happen here in those properties and stuff like that, that's going to smash many windows in its wake. As mentioned, unfortunately, there will be many injuries here, as many people inside buildings they'll see the initial blast and will go straight to the windows to sort of look out the windows to see what that blast was or what the light was, because you're going to see that light or that flash first, only to be caught out by the blast that quickly follows the that bright flash. And therefore, unfortunately, guys, it's going to cause many injuries to many people, and that are just going to get cut to ribbons by that glass as those windows sort of shatter. So what I'm trying to say is, if you ever see that, if you're ever at work or wherever, it doesn't matter. If you ever see that flash outside, the last thing you need to be doing is going to the window. You just hit the fucking deck, get on your bellies, and just wait for those windows to go through, if they're going to go through, depending on where you are. Because it's that causes many injuries or casualties, should we say. People living in Cavenham Icklingham, Kentford, Kennet, Chippingham, all round in these areas around here are going to go through that experience. They're going to experience the breaking glass and everything else. Now, I know this all sounds dismal, and it is, but let's just switch this a little bit. For anyone in the moderate, the thermal and light blast zones, if you're in some kind of shelter, like an expedient shelter, out in the garden or somewhere else, then you're going to greatly heighten your chances. Firstly, you're not going to be in a building that's likely to catch fire or collapse on you. You won't be exposed to any blast and therefore no third degree burns. And no one's going to get cut by glass. The only downside, excuse me, sorry, to this caveat is that you will need to be receiving some kind of warning before the blast. So what I mean by that is you want a warning, so you've got time to get into the shelter. So you guys, so you guys can put into action your plan. Without that warning, then you're going to get caught out. I think I've mentioned the three different types or the four different types of warnings in a previous video. So I'm just going to give you, if I know many of you have not watched those previous videos. That's what I'm going to say. That's why I keep saying it in every video that follows the next, because I know people are not watching them. However, warnings, okay, you are going to get warned, depending on where this attack is coming in from. Let me just quickly give you a rundown of those four warnings. So there is the strategic warning, a news broadcast over 1 to 2 days. That's going to give you time to prepare and sort yourselves out. There is then the tactical warning, and this one isn't great because it's giving you next to no time to prepare. The tactical warning would be sort of received by the highest officials, probably as little as a few minutes after the missiles have been launched. When I say the highest officials, we're talking about government, the Prime Minister and everyone else. So it's not like the likes of me and you walking the dog down the road or drinking a pint in the pub. We then have the official warning system, which all of you should be familiar with, and that warning will be sent to you via what they call the emergency alert system to your mobile phones and or broadcasted over the TV networks. However, the fourth warning method, and is by far the best method when we're talking about being prepared, and that is simply tracking the conflicts, keeping yourself up to date with current and real news, and making a judgment call on when you think that an attack or an SHTF situation is about to pop off. Now, listen, guys, I know and I appreciate it that we don't know when this is going to happen and we can't put times and dates to it. Although there's plenty of people online thinking that they can tell you when all of this is going to go off. Now, what you can do, though, is get an idea as to events building up and the possibilities of things happening. And with that, you prepare. And that's it. You plan and prepare for an SHTF situation or something that might happen. None of us know when any of this is going to happen. But if you see enough evidence based on facts, you've got to make a decision, guys. If you can start to prepare now, get your plans written out, tried and tested. So that's tried and tested your plans. If it's a bug out, test it, test the location, test the scenario. Make sure everyone in your household knows exactly what they're doing. Make sure that the kit or the bug out bag or grab bag that you're going to be using or taking is fully equipped. Make sure that anyway, you know what I'm saying. I could go on for ages. Okay. There's no point in having a plan in your head. Nobody else in the house knows about it, only you, and you've not tested anything. And then with that, you're just making a judgment call on when you think that attack or the SHTF situation is about to pop off. I'm going off track a little bit, but it's important to explain this. The reason why we're doing this is so we're ready for a possibility. Okay. Like I say, the whole purpose of this channel, guys, is just to provide you all with updates on global military postures changing and moving into place as we speak, and the war preparations that are being made by numerous countries across the globe. I will provide you with as much news as possible, just to allow you guys to get a feed and get a hook on what's actually happening. And like I say, when anything happens, I want to be quick. But as soon as I've verified that the information is correct, get it sort of recorded and get it out to you as quickly as we can. That's the whole purpose of these channels. I find, listen, there's plenty of prepping channels out there, but some of them are YouTubers. Now, I know that might not make sense because I'm publishing mine on YouTube, but I'm just using YouTube as a platform. I'm a prepper, and I'm not fussed about subscriptions, um, followers, likes, dislikes, and all that. I'm actually not bothered about those numbers because it's not about that. Um, if I've got 10 people that watch these videos, if I could definitively say that 10 people have watched all 20 videos, I'm going to know that those 10 people have taken something away from a good chunk of those videos. If I've got 500,000 subscribers, and every time I put a video out and 100,000 jump on, and I get I don't know, 12,000 likes, that's all fine. That's all good. I'm not a YouTuber, okay, guys. I'm a prepper, and I'm getting this information out to you because I want you to be prepared, okay. What I'm trying to say, I'm not fucking about. So, this is not a fuck about situation that could be unfolding, okay. This is a matter of life and death, and it's about you and your families, okay. So let's leave it there. Let's move on with the purpose of this video, and that is this simulation. So just to finish off, let's just take a look at the more damaging strike, shall we? And that's going to be a ground or surface burst sort of missile attack or strike on a location. And my secondary location is a place called Brize Norton in Oxfordshire. So hopefully, guys, you know that this is an airburst. Um, you can see the kind of damage that's going to be caused. I've told you the kind of effects that are going to happen in those 5 radiuses. When we get, not when we, let's not get ahead of myself. So straight back up to the top. I'm going to put in here, Brize Norton. Go, NukeMap will find it. It's pin dropped it. Forget about those radiuses because that's based on the other destination. What we're going to change here is, if you can see on the right here, we can change from air burst to surface burst. The surface burst is a ground burst. The missile hits the ground before detonating. So we're going to change that. Same size warhead. We're going to keep it as that. And I'm just going to detonate. And again, you can see the estimated fatalities, estimated injuries. Now we've got just over 5,500 fatalities and 12,500 injuries. That's going to be from the initial blast, really. That's not going to be overall. That's in any given 24-hour period, it says there, on an average of 40,200 people in the light blast range of the simulation detonation. So we're going to go through these again. So what you'll find is we've got the radiuses as normal, as you did with the airburst. The only difference is you've got an extra one here, which is called the heavy blast damage radius. Now, remember, the only difference between this bomb or this missile and the one before is that this one's hit the ground before detonating. So you're going to have different effects. Basically, what happens is when that missile hits the ground, it detonates and it vaporizes everything in and around a certain radius. That's buildings, cars, people, you name it, it vaporizes it. But then what it does is it generates or it creates a radioactive energy, and those particles, those radioactive particles, will attach themselves to all of those bits and pieces that have just been vaporized, kick it up into the air, into that mushroom cloud. And then what happens is the wind, it will sort of carry that cloud off and those radioactive particles with it, which is what is better known as a fallout cloud. So I'm going to zoom out. This is Brize Norton. We've got some radiuses there that we've already spoke about. I'm not going to go through those again. But what I want to talk about is what they call contours. Same as the radiuses, it's just that the contour is giving you the statistics and their effects based on the actual cloud itself. So let me zoom out. When we zoom out, remember, guys, we are in the UK. So apologies for any of you that are not in the UK and not understanding where we are with this. We are in the UK. Brize Norton is, it's sort of southwest of London, near a place called Oxford, Gloucester, and you've got various other locations there. But what I'm going to try and sort of explain to you guys, right? If somebody says to you, if a nuclear bomb goes off in the UK, what does that mean? You'll find that 85% of people will say, yeah, we're fucked, we're done, that's it, it's finished. Well, that's actually not the case. You need to understand the difference between an airburst and a ground burst. You need to understand what 175 kiloton yield means. You need to understand the difference between tactical nukes and ballistic missiles and conventional attacks and everything else. Okay, so when I zoom out of this, although that's 175 kiloton, and we've got a fallout cloud there going as far as the coast, towards Peterborough. That's definitely not killing the whole of the UK, Ireland, Scotland, and everywhere else. Okay, so I just want you to kind of get that myth out of your head that if a nuclear bomb goes off anywhere in the UK, we're all done. That's not the case. However, it's catastrophic in terms of people that live in this area and also under that fallout cloud. Now, just a quick thing to mention here about this fallout cloud, the wind direction. The prevailing winds in the UK are normally north or southwesterly, coming in from the west, either coming in from the northwest or southwest. This scenario here, you'll see that it's coming in from southwest. Southwesterly winds are going to blow that radiation or fallout cloud as far as Peterborough and further. Now you've got a windsock up here, which you can see, and you can actually move that and change it. So depending on the wind direction on the day or, for the week or whatever, it's something that as the news comes out and we kind of get closer to a situation that might or possibly happen, you might want to factor this into your checking. Most people check the weather every day to see whether it's going to be raining or whether they can put their washing on the line or whether they can get out and sunbathe or make a decision on what clothes they're wearing or whatever. Factor in, if you're going to do a weather check, what direction the wind's traveling in, okay? Because if you've got that in your back of your mind as by default, then at least if it happens, you know on the day roughly which direction the wind's blowing. And that really comes into effect in a minute when I sort of explain this to you. I'm going to keep this southwesterly, okay? I'm going to keep it like that, and I'll tell you for why, because that's the prevailing winds of the UK for about 70% of the year. That's what it normally is. We get the winds coming in off of the jet stream, coming in from the west over the Atlantic, and that's it. That's just the way our weather pattern is. Right, the statistics that I want to talk to you about here. I'm not going to. I'm going to go through these quickly. Let's just zoom in. I don't want to be missing anything because the whole purpose of this is to give you the details so you understand. So you've got your radiuses. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 6 rings here. 5 ball radius. As we know, it vaporizes everything. We've got the heavy blast. That does exactly that. It causes heavy damage to concrete buildings in its radius and 100% fatalities or thereabouts. Radiation radius is contaminating you with around about 500 rads, as I said, are likely to be fatal in about a month, and 15% of survivors will pass with cancer as a result. The moderate blast will still be causing fires within many buildings, causing many casualties. The thermal radiation radius, again, like I say, that will still be causing 3rd-degree burns to everyone caught outside at the time. Remember, guys, outside. Okay, you're outside, not inside. And then finally, you've got your light blast, and that's going to give you that's going to give you a lot less damage, to buildings and stuff like that. The further out away from ground zero, the better it's going to be. Okay, that's it. Now, moving on to what would be the bigger sort of danger, and that is the fallout cloud itself. So on NukeMap, they specify fallout clouds inside contours instead of radiuses. Just going to drag this down there so we can kind of see these different contours. What you'll see is, let's scroll down. So on the right hand side now, what we've got is 4 contours, fallout contours. So we've got a fallout contour for 1000 rads per hour. Now, guys, if you don't understand these rads and rems, honestly, I can't go through it now because it's a completely separate video of information. So go back and just watch. If you need to understand it, I've done a NukeMap video. It's giving you an overview, and I've done a radiation video, and it tells you what this is. You need to understand what these rads and rems are, because that's your threat. Okay, radiation is going to be a threat, and you need to know what you can get away with and what you can't get away with, and also how to protect yourself from it. Location, right? So no, not location inspection. I'm going to do that in a second. But contours. Okay, so we've got a fallout contour. If you're in that area that's blinking at the moment on the screen, within an hour you could be exposed to 1000 rads. You'll see also it's got a maximum downwind fallout distance of about 30k. So you'll see that on the blinking thing anyway. Maximum width of about 436 meters. Approximate area affected is about 100 kilometers squared. Then out from that, as the cloud kind of starts to disperse and go further afield and get blown further downstream, upstream, whichever way you want to look at it, the fallout contour here, if you're in that area, you're likely to be exposed to 100 rads per hour. I'm not going to go through those measurements and distances. Actually, you can just see that on the screen. We'll cover that in a second in these examples that I'm going to give you. fallout contour in, let's zoom out and let's just drag that down there. Let's look at the bigger picture. So now the fallout contour here, number 3, if you're in that area, then you're likely to be hit with 10 rads per hour. Now, that's good, guys. That's easily survivable. Okay, that's what I'm saying to you. So you could even be under this fallout cloud, again, depending on how long for and whether you've got access to medical attention and whatever. All those sort of factors. But what I'm trying to say is, as that bomb sort of detonates above, not above, in or on Brize Norton, you're going to know what effects you've got coming to you within 1 to 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 hours. Then the final one. So as you can see there, that one that's flashing, that's the outside one. You're going to likely be exposed to just 1 rad per hour. That's it. Again, guys, these metrics are all kind of approximate, and this site uses different algorithms to make certain calculations based on all sorts of other formulas and everything else. Let's not get into that. I want to explain this piece to you, which is the most important bit, because guys, when this happens, we are all going to get caught off guard. Okay. Now, this piece that I wanted to highlight here in this session is what they call the location inspection tool, which allows you to do exactly that. However, I'm more interested in the metric results that are presented when using this tool. So basically what you do is you simply, so just scrolling back up to the top, just by the detonation button, we've got this inspect location. When I click that, you'll get this little guy pin dropped here, and it means that I can drag it about and drop it wherever I like. Now, when I move that, so basically what that does is it allows me to move this into an area. It could be here, this fallout, that fallout. It could be in Bicester, but if I live in Buckingham, let's drop it there. And what it's going to do is going to give you statistics based on your likely exposure, but it's going to be based on other metrics. So let me just go through this logically for you. What you'll see, basically what you'll see now is a third set of metrics. So you've added the radius, we've added the contour numbers. Now, if we move that location inspection marker to any given area on the map, you'll be presented with a set of, it's like numbers referring to sample points. Let's use Bicester as an example. This is important because you'll see that by placing that marker into or under the fallout cloud, NukeMap will now tell you what the PSI is or the overpressure number. I'm not going to go into what that is. It's probably irrelevant at the moment. The total exposure dosage, that's important because you want to know how many REMs you're going to get hit with and possible symptoms to expect. But I like the sort of whereby I like the fact that basically what it gives you what they call a protection factor or a PF. Now, if you click on the arrow, let me show you. Once you've got your marker in the location, if we go down to here where it says information at sample points, we've got a set of metrics here. I'm not going to go through all of those. There's only 2 or 3 that I want you to kind of sort of remember during this session. It's going to be based on exposure time over 24 hours. You can change that, okay? But let's just say the first 24 hours from the strike to the following day, okay? We want to know what the exposure is going to be to you, your family, depending on different scenarios. And when I say a scenario, if you're in Bicester, that's fine. If you are in Bicester when that missile strikes and you're in a car, then that's going to be different to somebody who's in a basement. Okay, so that's where your PF or your protection factor comes into it. The protection factor is that the car would be a factor, the basement would be a factor, a building would be a factor, and so forth. So first and foremost, you've got factors between 1 and 100. I think I'm not too sure what it is, but let's just go through. Right, so the protection factor of 1. If you've got a protection factor of 1, as you can see here in the open, okay, so you're being stood out in the open. I'm guessing the protection factor or PF of 0 would be actually being hit by the missile, being on ground 0 and the missile comes down on your head. Okay, there's no protection factor there, full stop. When you change the PF number or level, you'll see that the total exposure dose in REMS changes. So at the moment, if you're stood out in the open, you're going to be over a 24-hour period, you're going to be exposed to 106 REMS. And it's telling you're going to get sickness, including less than 5% chance of death in 60 days. 3% of survivors will die of cancer as a result of the exposure. That's whilst you're stood outside in Bicester over a 24-hour period. Now, you're going to have to be some kind of idiot to be stood outside for 24 hours after something like this has happened. But I don't know people's circumstances. It could be you're injured, you've broken your legs whilst walking the dog across the field, and no one knows you're there, and you're laid in the field for 24 hours before someone finds you. You're going to be exposed to 106 REMS. So if you change, right, so basically what we're saying is that the protection factor we can change. Now, if we change that protection factor to in an automobile, so that's going to be a car, a vehicle of some sort. So if I change that, so if you're in a car in Bicester, in the middle of nowhere in Bicester, it's hard to say because it's a town and it's hard to be in the middle of nowhere in a town. But let's just say, for instance, that you're in the middle of nowhere, your car breaks down and you're sat in your car for 24 hours. You're going to be exposed to 71 REMS. Okay, so not the 106 or whatever. So it's come down a little bit. So that protection factor from you being inside a car gives you a little bit of protection. You've then got inside a single story frame house. Now that would be, when I say frame, or that says frame, I'm guessing a timber-like property. I'm not too sure. Now, remember, this is going to be a universal application. So we could be talking about, America is, there's a lot of homes, mobile homes and travel parks and just homes made out of timber. So I'm just going to go on the assumption that that's what that means. So it's a single story framed house. Now, if we are in that kind of building in Bicester, so for the first 24 hours, your exposure is going to be 53 REMS. So you can see where I'm going with this, okay? Every time we change the scenario in terms of where you are, your protection factor changes, therefore your chances are either greater or lesser. If you're inside a one-story frame house and it's got a basement, and you're in the basement, your REM exposure now has gone down to 11. So even in Bicester, you're going to be, I mean, you're not going to be in a massive amount of danger, and from after the initial detonation and for the 24 hours following that. What we will see though here is that, let me just have a look at something here quickly. Right, okay. I'm sure it said something. Oh, right, yeah. So at the top here, the sample point is 32 kilometers from ground zero. So so if that's 32 kilometers from Brize Norton to there, you've also got to bear in mind the wind direction is what I said, but also the wind speed. So if, for instance, that detonation goes off there, you're gonna, if you can, or sort of kind of be able to calculate how long it's going to take for that radiation cloud or the fallout cloud to get from Brize Norton to Bicester, because it might be that you can get in a car, travel south, and go to Aylesbury and not be anywhere near that fallout cloud. But anyway, that's what I'm saying. So if you're in Bicester and you are in a two-story brick veneer property, that's going to be similar to most houses in the UK. Then your exposure is 35 Ren. If we drop that into a basement, so you've got a basement, you're then down to 5 REM. So if your house has got a basement basically, and you're in that basement for the first 24 hours, the likely exposure is going to be 5 REMs. Okay, that's that. It gets better if you're in a 3-story building, brick building, and you're on the second floor. So that's 15 REMs in Bicester, this is. And then if that 3-story building's got a basement, you're down to 2 REMs. So you're pretty safe, man. You're in a pretty good place there. So what I'm trying to say is all this doom and gloom. Listen, if you're in this area here, ground zero, you're going to be in trouble. It's not to say that you've got no chance. Because listen, guys, let me just show you. Yes, these numbers are going to be completely different and they're going to be a lot more severe. But if you're in a basement, so let's just see what that actually means. Let's drag this inspect location inspect it. If you're down here somewhere and you are in obviously your car, 650 rems. Okay, so if that goes off and you're in your car, actually that car's probably going to satellite and you're done anyway. However, if you're in a basement, let's say for instance you are in a basement in a multi-story concrete building, so you're at work. Let's say for instance you're sat at your desk and you're at work, and there is a basement there, and you hear that that's gone off. You're going to have a bit of, probably a minute tops. Well, you'll have a couple of minutes. I don't know. You need to be away from the windows to be to start and get your asses down into the basement. Once you're in the basement, you're talking about 10 rems. Okay, so in ground zero, if you're in the right place and you've got a protection factor between you and that exposure, then it doesn't matter where you are. So this is why, guys, I'm showing you this, because it's important that you have a plan. Okay, more than one plan. Actually, you're going to need to have a plan on based on your routine. And is it a plan just for you or for your family? Are your kids going to be at school? Is your missus going to be working or shopping? Are you going to be at work? Is it just you and your retired missus and you're likely to be gardening in an allotment? What just look at those scenarios. But you know what? The main question that you need the answer to is your location. Now, again, I've done a video on the 40 possible counterforce and countervalue targets here in the UK. I've only done it in the UK, guys, because I haven't yet, found those locations across Europe, but I will do. As soon as you know what those 40 locations are, you know what the possible targets are. Then what you can do, if let's say, for instance, you live here in Didcot, you know that Brize Norton is going to be the closest primary target, possible target to you. So you can make your plans. If there's a 175 kiloton tactical nuke, ground burst or air burst over the top of Brize Norton, you're in a fairly safe place, providing the wind is not blowing. So providing the wind is not blowing in that direction. So if you have got northwesterly winds coming in, that could change things. And if you've got that going over the capital city as well, that's going to be causing complete mayhem. So again, like I say, there's a lot of things to factor in, but the most important piece I wanted to sort of get across to you was this PF, as in the protection factor, um, and what that actually means to you based on where you are at the time, or not where you are at the time. But let's just say, for example, let's go back to the prevailing winds. We're going to get that traveling across Peterborough. Now, if you are in, I don't know, Thrapston, let's say, for instance, you're in that place there called Thrapston. I'm going to put this locator inspection point on Thrapston. What you'll see is that that sample point is 100 kilometers from ground zero. Okay. What you'll also see here is that the time of arrival at the location, so that's the time that this radiation is going to get to Thrapston, it's going to be 4 hours and 8 minutes. So on the radio, whether it's an emergency alert system on your phone or whatever it is, you're going to get that and you go, right, okay, the prevailing winds are this. We could grab a shitload of stuff, throw it all in the boot of the car, and then what we're going to do is we're going to either travel north through Corby into Uppingham, Oakham, and that way. So you're out the way of the fallout cloud before it's even got to you, or travel south into St Neots, over to Cambridge, or further south into Stevenage. Okay, you're going to have, you see across there, you're going to have at least 4 hours before that fallout cloud even gets to you. So guys, this is where your planning comes into it, and that's why I can't emphasize enough the importance of this NukeMap simulation platform or simulation application. It's a lifesaver, because you can so much, not so much, you can better plan, all your scenarios based on this. You can simulate what the likely outcomes, and with that you can plan. You know what your times are, you know what your exposures are, you know whether, if you're right, let's say for instance you're in Toaster. Let's move that down to Toaster. If you work in Toaster and you're a prepper and you're aware that Brize Norton is 56 kilometers away. And it's a ground burst that goes off. You're going to know it's going to take a couple of hours, 2 hours, 20 minutes ish, for that fallout radioactive cloud to reach you. Now, if you work in Towcester, but you live in Wellingborough, it's either do I travel from Towcester to Wellingborough to get home, depending on whether you're bugging in at home, or is it just you and have you got a bug out bag in your car and you travel north into Daventry and Rugby, or you go south into Milton Keynes, Bletchley, Leighton Buzzard? You know what I'm saying? With this application, you can kick off the simulation basically, guys, and with that you can plan. I can't sort of put it any sort of simpler than that, to be honest with you. This NukeMap is excellent. Honestly, it's a lifesaver because it's allowed me to make a lot better plans. So that was the addition, as in this location inspection pointer. You can put it anywhere. You can put it out here. There's no radioactive fallout cloud, so you're going to get zeros. It will tell you the distance, but you've got zeros because you're not under the cloud. Move it into the cloud over here into Banbury. You've got your metrics. You know it's 37 kilometers away. You know it's going to take an hour and a half for that fallout cloud to reach you. But you also know, if you look here, you're in that area there. So exposure is going to be around about 10 rads anyway. That should, dose rate of the time of arrival, yeah, 12 rads. So it's about the same. So worst case scenario, if you can't get out of Banbury and you've got your house shielded or you've got a little shelter or something, you can stay there. My guess is you'd want to get in the car and just travel into Warwick. Could be a 20-minute, half-hour drive, but you're out the way. That's it. So again, that's what I'm saying to you. That's about it, guys. I can't sort of say that any differently. There was a lot more I wanted to say, but I've kind of just quickly rattled that down. I'm always conscious of your time, guys, and I'm always conscious that I babble on for God knows how long, but I just want to emphasize the importance of this NukeMap. It doesn't cost anything. There's no subscriptions. There's none of that bullshit. Just get onto NukeMap. Watch my video on the threats to the UK, because on there I've got 40 counterforce and countervalue targets that I've identified in this country. Look at those targets. If you live anywhere near them, simulate one of these explosions above that location that's closest to your home or wherever it is that you reside, and then just see what you need to do. Okay, guys, that's it from me. Remember to stay sort of military fit, infantry aware, and I'll catch up with you soon.